From the studio at Capismo Communications, hello again, everybody. Welcome to Houston City Beat. I'm Lisbet Marquez. Thank you for joining us. I'm happy for you to join us as we once again bring you another fun episode showcasing our neighbors and stories throughout the greater Houston area. We have another edition of Did You Know, where Mike Acosta tells the story of a citywide civil defense event that took place weekly for 40 years during the Cold War era. We also went to Mission Control at NASA's Johnson Space Center, where Mike Acosta spoke with Flight Director Ed Van Cise about the International Space Station, commercial space exploration, and NASA's current plans for the moon and beyond with the Artemis program. But first, as you may already know, our great city is named after General Sam Houston, the late American general and statesman who led the Texian army to victory over Santa Anna and the Mexican army in the Battle of San Jacinto in 1836, which won independence for the Texas Republic. Mike Acosta and I took a road trip to the Sam Houston Museum in Huntsville, Texas, where a special memorial ceremony was held to commemorate the 160th anniversary of Sam Houston's passing. Let's take a look.
And welcome again, everybody, to Houston City Beat. I'm Mike Acosta. I'm here with Derrick Birdsall, the director of the Sam Houston Memorial Museum and Presidential Library. It's a very big name, and I didn't want to mess it up, but we are here in Huntsville. Today is July 26th, and it is actually the 160th anniversary of General Sam Houston's passing, our namesake for the city of Houston and Houston City Beat. So we made the trip out here to show you the ceremony, and we're here with Derrick right now in the museum. If you haven't been out here to the museum, come on out. It is fantastic. You'll learn about the city you live in, everything that went on with Sam Houston. In fact, we're standing in front of this diorama here that actually shows the surrender of Santa Anna at San Jacinto.
Right. Yeah. So, April of 1836, Battle of San Jacinto takes place. Sam Houston was the general in charge of the Texas Army, such as it was. Yes. And they defeated a superior force and one of the shortest battles in military history. With really, when you boil the numbers down, there weren't a lot of people that participated, but the results of that little 18-minute battle were quite consequential. Yeah. Pretty much the United States wouldn't look like the United States does today without Houston being successful at that battle.
Correct. And they did it, Sam Houston had it right. He said, let's wait until they take a nap, and then we'll get them. We got them right where we want them. We know what time they take a nap in the afternoon, and then they go on in, right?
But it was really, Santa Anna made some tactical blunders leading up to the battle. He split the size of his army. One part went to chase the government, and one part went to chase the Texas Army, which effectively kind of halved his army, which kind of fell into a trap, if you want to use that word. But Santa Anna believed that once his army arrived on the battlefield, that they would be attacked right away. So he had all of his soldiers kind of stand to and not take a break after having been on a forced march. Yeah. And that attack never happened, and Santa Anna kept his troops standing at the ready, and that attack didn't come, and it didn't come, and finally he's like, okay, we gotta stand down and relax for a minute. And whether it was for good planning on Houston's part or just good luck that it happened the way it did, the Texas Army attacked right as the Mexican Army was taking a break, and that battle was over effectively pretty quick. Yeah,
and we were just out at the San Jacinto Monument not that long ago, about a month ago or so. And we were walking around, and you kind of think back, all this was marshland, before the monument, before the ship channel was there. And you think about those times. Well, you have a lot of artifacts from that era here in this museum. In fact, there's one piece that goes, and tell me about that one piece that's very, very unique.
So look, probably it's one of my top 3 things that we have in our collection, and it's a Roman coin from about AD 200. And our best guess is that coin was worn as a lucky pendant or a piece of jewelry that a Mexican officer wore, that he either lost his life at the battle or lost it in the scuffle while the battle was going on, and that Roman coin fell on the ground at San Jacinto and was discovered a few years ago. And the archaeologists are like, did how did that get here? How did that? And they really kind of stopped because they thought somebody had planted that piece of Roman history at San Jacinto. But our best guess is it was worn as a piece of jewelry there. The other neat thing that we have from the battle is we have the only surviving pieces of the twin sisters. So the two cannons that the Texas Army had at some point got lost to time.
Wow.
And nobody knows where they are. Whether those cannons went to the Mexican War, where the United States, in 1846 went into Mexico, fought the Mexican-American War, whether they got used in the Civil War, but they just disappeared. Yeah. And no one knows where the actual tubes are. Well, the only tangible pieces of the twin sisters that exist we have in our display right here.
Amazing.
Which is if you're a history nerd, super cool.
Super cool. Us, but this is very cool because you're talking about the birth of Texas, where Texas, without General Sam Houston coming from Tennessee, he was the only person to be a governor of two states, and Texas and Tennessee, and without a man like that in Texas, we would not have everything that we have here. It could be completely different. We wouldn't be standing here in this museum. Everything would be different. Everything as we know it, Texas history, how the land evolved, would be completely different from what we know today. So it's a great facility that you have here. Tell me, it's an actual presidential museum now.
Correct. In 2017, we were designated as a presidential library by the Texas legislature. And so we are rolling things out, one of which will be, this exhibit behind us is going to go away, and we'll replace it with Sam Houston's executive mansion, which really was a very small log cabin, 2 rooms. I tell people when they come visit, it's basically a bachelor pad because Houston is living in this cabin with a couple of other dudes with no supervision, and there's just no telling what they were getting into in that house. But we're going to replace this exhibit with a log cabin where you can walk inside Sam Houston's Oval Office and get to experience some of what Houston was dealing with as president of Texas in 1837.
Yeah, and you really get the sense of Sam Houston's life. This is a beautiful museum, and it's right here on the grounds, right across from Sam Houston State University. If you've never been here and you live in Houston or you're in Texas, it's pertinent that you come here because you really learn. It's just as important. This area is important like the Alamo or going to San Jacinto in Houston. You really gain a lot of knowledge and you gain a lot about the heritage of the land that we all live on. And that's amazing to me. So today is the 160th anniversary of Sam Houston's passing, and that happened at the Steamboat House, which is here on property. And you're going to open up the doors to the Steamboat House. Usually it's glassed off. I was here recently and you can see the interior, and it's a great, beautiful setup, the presentation, but you will be actually able to go in and see it. Tell us a little bit about what you have planned for today for that.
So once upon a time, in a galaxy far, far away, we used to keep the Steamboat House and then Houston's other home, the Woodland home, open. And you could walk through and get inside the buildings on a day-to-day basis. But our job as a museum is to make sure that when your kids have kids, those kids can come back and see the same thing that you get to see today. And so for the well-being of the house and just to try to keep the climate under control inside the buildings, we've closed it off to where you can peek through the plexiglass, but you can't get in on a daily basis. So all other things aside, letting people inside the Steamboat House, particularly for members of the Huntsville community, that's a special day.
It is,
because they remember when they were kids. Oh, I can walk through. So we have it on days like today from the community of people who remember going through, and now they get to do it again. But Houston died, July 26, 1863. Was buried the very next day. We used to say a million years ago that there weren't a lot of people at Sam Houston's funeral because he was politically unpopular and the Civil War is raging and whatnot. But I think that's a little bit of a simplistic answer, just kind of, oh, well, that's the easy answer, so we'll go with that. And I think realistically, you look at Houston dies the evening of the 26th, he's buried in the next day in the morning. There's no internet, there's no TV, there's no news. So people just didn't even know that he had passed away, which I think is a much more realistic reason for why there's not a lot of people at Sam Houston's funeral. But
Brother Houston faithfully practiced the 3 principal tenets of Freemasonry: Those are his belief in the fatherhood of God, the brotherhood of man, and the immortality of the soul.
Houston had a Masonic rites funeral. The Masons basically carried him from the Steamboat house to the cemetery where he's buried today, and he was laid to rest on July 27th of 1863.
That's amazing. And tell us, how big are the grounds here?
Sure. So we have 15 acres of what's left of the Houston's original property here in Huntsville. Originally they had about 235 acres of property. In today's terms, I'd probably call it a hobby farm. They did try to make money off of the crops that they planted here, whether it was corn or cotton. But when you're competing with the very large plantations up and down the Trinity River that are several thousand acres, in size, Houston's farm really never produced any income. It never really made them any money. And it was just, again, I think it was a hobby farm, what we would call it today. But that, to me, that's what's special about our site is, this is it's not a Walt Disney World where it's all a make-believe deal. Sam Houston and his family, they lived and worked and played here. If Houston wasn't here in Huntsville, there wouldn't be a university across the street. There wouldn't be Texas prison system in town. And I tell local folks here, if it wasn't for Sam, Huntsville would be like Madisonville. No offense to Madisonville.
Sure.
But it'd be like Madisonville with the Buc-ee's on the interstate, and that'd be about it. So love them or hate them, and love the traffic or hate the traffic. If Houston weren't here at the bare minimum, there wouldn't be a university and there wouldn't be the prison system.
I would like to read a quote from Brother Houston that I found in my research. Quote, "The great misfortune is that a notion obtains that with those in power, that the world or the people require more governing than is necessary. To govern well is a great science, but no country is ever improved by too much governing. Govern wisely and as little as possible. Most men think when they are elevated to position that it requires an effort to discharge their duties, and they leave common sense out of the question." Period. Close quote. On behalf of the family, the members of Forest Lodge number 19, the Masons of Texas, and Masons throughout the world wheresoever they may be dispersed, your attendance and your attention is greatly appreciated. This ceremony is concluded.
There is a story that's recounted by one of Sam Houston's slaves, a guy named Jeff Hamilton. And Jeff remembers as Houston, as his end of days are starting to come, that he's visited by members of the Alabama-Coushatta Tribe, and he has this recollection of them singing to Sam Houston on the steps of the Steamboat house. And so members of the tribe will come here today and they will recreate that scene of singing to Sam Houston on the steps of the Steamboat house before he passed away.
Well, you guys have a fantastic display here.
Thank you.
Everything, the whole presentation, one of the things that I love about artifacts is really trying to put them in their most original state and not trying to change it too much, and let the story speak for itself when you see something and put something around it to really present it. And you guys do a great job out here. And once again, if you haven't been out to the Sam Houston Memorial Museum in Huntsville, especially if you live in Houston, if you've gone out to San Jacinto and you see the San Jacinto Monument, you need to make the short trip, pass by Sam on I-45 heading north, and it's a few exits past that and you'll be here. You bring the kids, it's a family environment. You come up here on an afternoon, whatever it is an easy stroll and you'll have a great time. And you have a shop here too. Absolutely. That has some great stuff in it as well. So Texas pride, Houston pride, you have it all right here.
Awesome.
Derrick, thank you so much for joining us on Houston City Beat today. Thank you very much.
segment of Houston City Beat on HCB-TV is brought to you by Capismo Communications. Visit them online at capismo.com. Stay right here. There's more of Houston City Beat on HCB-TV in a moment.
Take your business to higher ground with Capismo Communications. Capismo provides phone systems, IT management, cloud services, cabling infrastructure, internet connectivity, and podcast studio services. All the communications your business needs to be successful. Get unprecedented knowledge and impeccable reliability with Capismo Communications. Visit capismo.com.
Make sure to visit the Houston City Beat store today on HoustonCityBeat.com. Find exclusive products that'll kick your Houston pride into gear. Check out the latest releases and come back often to see latest editions. Just go to HoustonCityBeat.com and click on HCB Store on the menu. Shop the Houston City Beat store today because only Hugh can wear it so well.
Hi, I'm Robert Horton.
And I'm Jenna Horton.
We're your North Houston realtors with Red Door Realty.
Ready to assist you with all of your real estate needs. We're ambassadors, and we've got the beat on HoustonCityBeat.com.
Welcome back to Houston City Beat on HCB-TV. Houston has been home to NASA's manned space program for decades. Every NASA space mission is controlled and monitored by Mission Control. Mike Acosta went inside and spoke with Flight Director Ed Van Cise. Let's take a look.
Every NASA spaceflight is managed and controlled by Mission Control in Houston. Today, we visit with Flight Director Ed Van Cise.
And today we are here at Building 30 at NASA, the Johnson Space Center here in Houston. I'm here with Flight Director Ed Van Cise. Ed, thank you for joining us today.
Well, it's my pleasure. I really appreciate the opportunity to come talk with you.
It's very exciting being here because this building is we're in the Chris Kraft Mission Control Center. And Ed is the 78th Flight Director in NASA history. And when you think of all the names that have been flight directors with Chris Kraft, Gene Kranz, all these great names, how does it feel to be part of that fraternity?
It's both awe-inspiring. I've been a fanboy of NASA for as long as I can remember, so part of it is just can't believe that I'm here doing this job, let alone doing it with such great names like you mentioned. There's obviously some legacy that comes with that, and a lot of history and responsibility too. So it runs the whole gambit, but it's super cool for sure.
It is, and I know another fanboy of NASA too. You're talking to one right here.
There's the fascination, the altruism, the I want to go explore, push human beings out as far as we can. Intrepid space explorers, that is certainly driving us to some degree or another, because we have to take these missions that get put on paper and then eventually work them into reality and then go fly them safely and successfully. But then the more serious aspect, of course, comes into it as well. Everything we do is putting human beings at risk. Their lives are at risk. Outer space, low Earth orbit, beyond Earth orbit is very dangerous. It's not designed for humans. We have to design spacecraft and systems that'll keep them alive. And there are a lot of consoles here in this control room, but ultimately there's one that's responsible for the mission, and that's the flight director console. Everything comes up to us. And so you have to find a way, and it's through training and leadership and teamwork, you find a way to balance that enthusiasm with the fact that when I'm on console working a mission, I'm 100% responsible for the lives, say for space station, 7 astronauts and cosmonauts, $150+ billion, not just world class, but world unique orbiting laboratory, the lives of those crews, the safety of the vehicle, and then of course getting done lots of just science that can't be done anywhere else. And so that's a lot of responsibility, and so you try to balance both of those, and we're successful in doing that.
The difficulty of getting to space. You have to go about 200 miles up, right, off of the surface of the Earth. And you have to go at 17,500 miles an hour to maintain a low Earth orbit. that is no easy feat. It sounds, NASA has been in business for decades now, and it sounds like, you have it down, but every time you do it, you are making sure that it's being done right, just like it was the first time it ever was, right? Is that the way you kind of approach a mission?
Yeah, exactly right. You never really want to just lull yourself into thinking we've done this before, we just need to repeat it. It's straightforward and easy because it is very high risk, and our main job is really to manage those risks so we can get the job done safely. 250 miles doesn't sound like a lot. It's Houston to Dallas, and it just goes straight up instead. But oral mechanics is what it is. It's the speed that you're talking about, and 17,500 miles an hour. That doesn't make sense. I don't know what that is. So to put it in maybe a different perspective, that's 5 miles every second.
Yeah.
So I mean, that is incredibly fast, and there's a lot of energy involved in that. So you have to generate a lot of energy to get there, and then when you come home, you have to bleed all that energy off, and that's why it's so dangerous to get up and come down.
Have you been out to Kennedy to see a launch before? I would imagine. Maybe
I've seen a couple.
Yeah.
Again, in that early fanboy phase, when I first started here, I was a cooperative education student or an intern, and we would do road trips out to Kennedy to watch space shuttle launches, Falcon 9 launches, and other rocket launches for sure. So I went to the University of Michigan, and we had a payload on the side of the payload bay of the orbiter for that mission. So we actually had VIP tickets to go to the launch to see our tiny little
that's cool.
Payload fly there with all these Boeing executives and NASA executives for the space station.
What attracted you to want to get into the business of space exploration, to be involved with this?
It gets back to kind of the fanboy thing that we've been talking about. Just the enthusiasm, and it's kind of weird for me because that was sparked by a terrible disaster. I was 3rd grade, I think, in 1986 when Challenger was lost in that accident, and I would say I was at the unique age where, for those of us that lived it, right, it was on TV just constantly, the playing the replays over and over.
It was all day.
I was young enough to not really realize the human tragedy, and old enough to have it actually be a memory that stuck with me, and I recognized it as a thing. We didn't actually watch it in school for me, so I didn't see it until after the replays were on at home. But that thing happened, and then and that just got some curiosity started. And then from there, actually a couple of years later, I happened to get a book at the Air Force Museum in Ohio. And it was an overview of the first 25 shuttle flights, and the last one, of course, being Challenger. And it was the Rogers Commission report that talked about how Challenger was working to save the crew, even as the disaster was happening. And that really grabbed me. How did people create an engineering machine that will somehow, I personified it, and how it tried to save the astronauts and do everything possible to save the astronauts. And I said, I want to be involved in that. I want to. Star Trek was a big thing for me as well, so putting people boldly going and exploring and all of that, coupled with this thing that humans can do to keep people safe in space. And from there it was space camp and all sorts of things like that.
I always wanted to go to space camp. I never went to space camp.
You can still do it as an adult.
Can you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Guess where I'm going to go? You spent, if I'm correct, about 6,000 hours as a flight controller before becoming a flight director in 2009. You were with NASA for about 10 years or so, maybe 11 years before becoming a flight director. In that process, did you always think, I'm going to be a flight director one day? That's going to be my position one day. Did you have that in mind?
Not from the very beginning. Not necessarily. It's just funny how this all works out. The second time I went to space camp, I was actually we have long duration simulations, and I was a flight director for that. Which, if you go to space camp, you want to be an astronaut, so it's kind of disappointing. But I realized through that experience what mission control was, learned more about it, and then I came here and actually started working in mission control. But it wasn't until I was actually working in mission control here for International Space Station. I got to see what the flight directors did, what they're responsible for, and it could go both ways. It's a lot of responsibility, and it could turn you off, or you could just get super excited about it and I want to do that. And that's the category I fell into. I had lots of great mentors along the way. I can't underscore that enough. It's not me, it's the people I get surrounded by. One of those was Gene Kranz. So not directly coaching me, but just being exposed to his personality and what
Correct.
was like here in the earlier days of human spaceflight. Just cement it all, and then from there it was just finding a way to make your path to get
because
here.
you are carrying on a legacy with that.
The thing that helps drive that too is we're always developing new flight controllers, and the flight directors are in the path of getting the certifications done for those flight controllers. So we're regularly teaching and coaching and evaluating the strengths and the improvement points of those flight controllers as they work to get certified, and that helps remind us we have to maintain those same high caliber of requirements and just the way of thinking about things, those foundational abilities and skills that haven't changed since Chris Kraft and Gene Kranz.
Right.
The missions change, the spacecraft changes, the designs change, but the fundamental core values of how we maintain the crew safety and the vehicle safety, that hasn't changed.
Legacy Sports Network, now celebrating 16 years of broadcast excellence. We're your home for local high school sports coverage. Expect excellent audio and video production. Whether listening at home or at the game, find us at lsnsports.com. Legacy Sports Network, building a legacy, one game at a time.
Welcome back to Houston City Beat. For over 40 years, during the Cold War era, FEMA operated a civil defense program in Houston that utilized air raid sirens across the city. In this section of Did You Know, Mike Acosta takes us back and tells us that story.
Air raid sirens were once a weekly event in Houston during the Cold War era. Every Friday at noon, the civil defense system was activated. Similar to tornado sirens, they blasted through the air as a test. The sirens were installed in the early 1950s in various areas of the city to warn of a nuclear attack. This program was subsidized by the Federal Emergency Management Agency and lasted 40 years. The siren system was considered to be obsolete by the early 1990s, and at a cost of $35,000 to $50,000 per year to maintain, the program ended when these civil defense sirens sounded through the Houston airspace for the last time on Friday, April 24th, 1992. In total, there were 42 sirens located within Houston's Loop 610 area, and they were installed before the expansion of the suburban areas around the city. Approximately 107 more sirens would have been needed at the time to keep up with Houston expansion, all at a cost of $3.6 million. Today's technology includes emergency systems that can override broadcast signals and streams and reach millions of people in a matter of seconds on phone displays. Several decommissioned sirens stayed in place for up to 20 years after the sirens were turned off. Usually they were at fire stations, which were eventually moved as these stations were renovated. For Houston City Beat, I'm Mike Acosta. Thanks for watching.
Well, that wraps up this episode of Houston City Beat on HCB-TV. We hope you enjoyed it. We want to thank our sponsors, Capismo Communications, Legacy Sports Network, Fun Faces, and Infovine. Make sure to visit us at HoustonCityBeat.com. At Houston City Beat, we are proud of the city that we live in, where there's so many wonderful things happening in our communities. Together, we have the pulse of one, and there's just something about that beat. Houston City Beat. For Mike Acosta, I'm Lisbet Marquez. Thank you for joining us.